Before kings ask for power, before rulers ask for wealth, before leaders ask to defeat their enemies, one man asked for wisdom, not riches, not long life, not revenge. And because of that single request, history remembers him as the wisest man to ever live. His name was Solomon, and what he understood about life, decisions, money, relationships, discipline, and the human heart is still shaping the world 3,000 years later. If you've ever made a decision you regretted, if you've ever chased success but felt empty, if you've ever wondered why smart people still ruin their lives, this message is for you. Solomon wasn't born wise. He was born into pressure. He was the son of King David, a warrior, legend, national hero. And Solomon inherited a kingdom at its peak, which meant expectations at their highest. Imagine being young, inexperienced, and suddenly responsible for a nation. That's where Solomon begins. And here's where the story changes everything. When God appeared to Solomon and said, "Ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you," most people would have asked for power to dominate wealth, to secure the future enemies to be destroyed. Solomon asked for an understanding heart, wisdom, the ability to discern right from wrong, the ability to judge well, the ability to lead without destroying people. That request alone reveals something profound. Wisdom is more valuable than success. Discernment matters more than opportunity. Character must come before capacity. And God's response? Because you didn't ask for wealth, power, or long life, I'll give you wisdom and everything else. That principle still applies today. Solomon's wisdom wasn't theoretical. 2 women came to him, 1 baby, both claiming to be the mother. No witnesses, no evidence, no DNA tests, just a decision. Solomon didn't panic. He didn't guess. He said, "Bring me a sword." Gasps filled the room. "Cut the baby in 2. One woman agreed. The other begged for the child to live, even if it meant losing him. And Solomon said, "That is the mother." Why? Because real love protects life, and true wisdom reveals the heart. This moment didn't just make Solomon famous, it established a truth we still ignore today. Wisdom isn't loud, it's precise. Wisdom doesn't rush, it discerns. Wisdom sees motives, not just actions. Solomon teaches us something dangerous but freeing. You can be talented and still foolish. You can be wealthy and still blind. You can be educated and still make disastrous choices. Wisdom is not information. Wisdom is application. And the tragedy of our generation is this: we have more access to knowledge than any people in history, yet less ability to apply it. Solomon wrote Proverbs for that exact reason, because wisdom isn't meant to be admired, it's meant to be lived. In the next part, we're going deeper. Solomon's wisdom about decisions, discipline money, speech character, and why he said something shocking. The beginning of wisdom is this: not success, not confidence, not intelligence, something much deeper. Stay with me. Most people want wisdom. Very few people are willing to start where wisdom begins. Solomon didn't say wisdom begins with intelligence. He didn't say it begins with experience. He didn't say it begins with age, education, or confidence. He said something that offends modern culture. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That word fear doesn't mean terror. It means reverence. It means alignment. It means recognizing that you are not the highest authority in your own life. And that's where most people stop listening, because wisdom requires humility. Solomon understood something we still struggle to accept. You can be intelligent and still unwise. You can know better and still choose wrong. You can understand consequences and still ignore them. Why? Because wisdom doesn't live in the mind alone. It lives in the heart. Solomon observed human behavior closely, and he noticed a pattern. People don't fail because they lack information. They fail because they reject correction. That's why Proverbs repeats one phrase again and again. The wise listen. The wise receive instruction. The wise accept rebuke. And the fool resents correction. The fool explains instead of learns. The fool doubles down instead of turning around. Wisdom begins when pride ends. Solomon warned about many types of people, but one stands out: the person who is wise in their own eyes. This is the individual who can't be corrected, always has an explanation, never takes responsibility, thinks feedback is an attack. Solomon said this person is harder to reach than a fool. Why? Because they've already crowned themselves the authority. And wisdom cannot grow where teachability dies. Solomon's wisdom isn't abstract, it's painfully practical. Think about it. How many relationships fail because no one wants to listen? How many financial mistakes repeat because lessons weren't learned? How many careers stall because pride blocks growth? Wisdom doesn't shout. Wisdom whispers. But only the humble hear it. That's why Solomon said, wisdom cries out in the streets. Not because it's hidden, but because people are too distracted to listen. Solomon taught that wisdom is not a one-time decision. It's daily choices, daily restraint, daily alignment. He observed that small compromises lead to large collapses, that unchecked habits quietly shape destiny, that what you tolerate today becomes what controls you tomorrow. Wisdom says, think before you speak, pause before you react, weigh consequences before choosing pleasure. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Wisdom often feels restrictive at first, but it leads to freedom later. Foolishness feels freeing at first, but it leads to bondage later. Solomon warned against haste, quick decisions, fast money, rushed relationships, instant gratification. He noticed something timeless. People who rush often regret. People who wait often win. Wisdom slows you down long enough to see clearly, and clarity saves lives. In the next part, Solomon gets uncomfortably specific. He talks about money and wealth, work ethic and laziness, discipline, diligence, and prosperity. And what he says will completely change how you view success. Because Solomon didn't just become wealthy. He understood why wealth comes and why it leaves. Part 3 is where this gets practical. Solomon was one of the wealthiest people to ever live. But what made him dangerous wasn't his money. It was that he understood money. And what he teaches completely dismantles the myths we still believe today. Solomon never told people to chase riches. In fact, he warned against it. He observed that people who pursue money as the goal often lose both peace and purpose. Why? Because money magnifies who you already are. It doesn't fix character, it exposes it. That's why Solomon said, wisdom is better than gold and understanding better than silver. Not because money is evil, but because money without wisdom is dangerous. Solomon repeatedly contrasts two people, the diligent and the lazy. Not the talented and untalented, not the lucky and unlucky, the disciplined and the undisciplined. This matters because Solomon noticed something most people miss. Prosperity doesn't usually come suddenly. Poverty doesn't usually come suddenly either. They both arrive slowly, through habits, small decisions repeated daily. Solomon watched people closely. He saw people who talked a lot, but produced little. He saw people who planned endlessly, but never acted. And he saw people who worked faithfully in small things and quietly advanced. His conclusion? Hard work isn't glamorous, but it's reliable. Shortcuts promise speed, but they steal sustainability. That's why Solomon warned against get-rich-quick thinking. laziness disguised as rest dreams without discipline, because effort partnered with wisdom always outlasts hype. Think about how this applies today. People want the lifestyle without the learning, the income without the integrity, the reward without the routine. Solomon would say, "You can't harvest what you refuse to plant. You can't grow what you won't tend. You can't sustain what you didn't build correctly." Wisdom teaches patience in a culture addicted to speed. Solomon didn't say money ruins people. He said loving money does, because love shapes decisions. When money becomes the master, ethics bend, boundaries blur, contentment disappears. Solomon noticed that the more people had, the more they worried about losing it. So he taught something radical. It's not how much you have, it's how much you trust it. Wisdom knows money is a tool. Foolishness turns it into a god. Here's something Solomon understood deeply. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. Laziness today creates pressure tomorrow. People think discipline limits them, but Solomon saw the opposite. Discipline gives you choices. Lack of discipline removes them. That's why wisdom values consistency over intensity. But Solomon didn't stop with money and work. He went even deeper. He warned about something more powerful than wealth, more destructive than laziness. The tongue, relationships, self-control. Because you can build everything right and still destroy it with your words. Part 4 is where Solomon gets personal. Solomon observes something terrifying. Most people don't lose their future all at once. They talk it away. They react it away. They give it away through poor relationships and lack of restraint. That's why he spent so much time talking about the tongue. Because words are small, but the damage they cause is massive. Solomon said, life and death are in the power of the tongue, not metaphorically, practically. He noticed that words shape reputations, destroy trust, heal wounds, escalate conflict, build or collapse relationships. And here's what's dangerous. You don't have to be cruel to be destructive. You just have to be careless. Solomon warned that a fool speaks quickly. The wise pause, because wisdom understands this. Once words leave your mouth, you no longer control where they land. Solomon challenged the idea that power is dominance. He said the person who controls their spirit is greater than one who conquers a city. Think about that. You can win arguments and still lose relationships. You can overpower people and still lack control over yourself. Wisdom isn't about restraint because you're weak. It's restraint because you're strong enough to wait. Impulse destroys faster than ignorance ever could. Solomon warned repeatedly about the people you allow close to you. Not because everyone is evil, but because influence is unavoidable. He noticed that character spreads, attitudes spread, habits spread, values spread. That's why he warned against toxic companionship, constant conflict, environments that normalize chaos. Wisdom chooses peace over drama. Wisdom values alignment over excitement. And Solomon was clear. Bad company doesn't always look bad at first. It often looks fun. Think about it honestly. How many regrets started with a conversation? How many situations escalated because no one paused? How many opportunities disappeared because of one emotional moment? Solomon would say, not every thought needs a voice. Not every feeling needs an audience. Not every reaction needs to be expressed. Wisdom filters before it releases. Solomon also warned about desire without restraint, because desire itself isn't evil, but unmanaged desire becomes destructive. He saw people chase pleasure at the cost of peace, at the cost of family, at the cost of integrity. And he understood something haunting. What you refuse to control today will eventually control you. Self-control isn't denial, it's direction. And now we reach the most sobering part of Solomon's story. Because the wisest man who ever lived still fell. Not because he lacked knowledge, but because he ignored it. His failure is the final lesson. Part 5. How the wisest man still fell and what it means for us. Here's the part most people skip. Solomon didn't fail because he lacked wisdom. He failed in the presence of wisdom, and that should sober all of us. Solomon wrote about discipline. He warned about desire. He explained the danger of divided hearts. And then he ignored his own counsel. The wisest man to ever live slowly drifted, not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly, one compromise at a time. Solomon didn't wake up one day and abandon wisdom. It happened gradually. He tolerated what he once resisted. He justified what he once warned against. He allowed proximity to shape his priorities. And this is the lesson. Most people don't ruin their lives with one big decision. They ruin them with many small permissions. Wisdom doesn't disappear. It gets overruled. Solomon proves something uncomfortable. You can teach wisdom and still disobey it. You can quote truth and still live contrary to it. Because wisdom only protects those who submit to it. Information without obedience is powerless. And this is why Solomon's life matters so much. If wisdom alone guaranteed success, Solomon would have been untouchable. But wisdom requires alignment, not admiration. Solomon's heart became divided, not all at once, but gradually. And divided hearts always weaken discernment. What once felt wrong began to feel normal. What once required caution became casual. That's the danger. Wisdom is loud at the beginning, but quiet when repeatedly ignored. Near the end of his life, Solomon reflects on everything: the wealth, the pleasure, the accomplishments, the achievements. And he says something haunting. It's all meaningless without reverence for God. Not because life has no joy, but because joy without wisdom doesn't last. Solomon's final message isn't despair, it's clarity. Wisdom isn't about being perfect, it's about being aligned. It's not about knowing more, it's about choosing better. It's not about avoiding mistakes forever. It's about responding quickly when wisdom speaks. Because wisdom still calls, still warns, still invites. The question isn't whether wisdom is available. The question is whether we'll listen. If the wisest man who ever lived needed humility, so do we. If wisdom didn't exempt him from consequences, it won't exempt us either. But wisdom still offers this promise. If you seek it, if you listen to it, if you live by it, it will guard your steps. It will shape your future. It will save you from regret. That is the legacy of Solomon. Not perfection, but perspective.